All right, this is Jeannie Berlin. Jeannie Adams Berlin?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Jeannie Adams Berlin, okay? And she's going to talk to us today about her papa. So you tell us who your papa is, what do you know about him, when he was born, where he was brought up, little things like that. So go ahead.
Okay, Papa was a child of the Barzilay family, Barzilay. He was one of 9 children, and excuse me, I can't remember the names of all of them, but was the oldest, and Aunt Rhea, that people may talk of, was the very youngest, and she was a baby in the family. She was 2 when Nani and Papa got married.
So who was Nani?
Nani is Papa's wife, and that's my grandma.
What's her name?
And when, I can't remember these things. Why can't I remember? Nani was Naomi Klausner.
That's right.
Nani was Naomi Klausner. She married Isaac Joseph Barzilay. And it was, I forget exactly what year, but it was probably, I'm not even going to try to guess because I'm confused with the time.
Look at the phone when you talk.
Okay, and I'm looking this way.
Yeah, okay, good. All right. So what else can you tell us? Where was he brought up?
I believe they were brought up in New York. I think probably in New York City, because they moved. The Barzilays lived in the big house in Mount Vernon, New York, on I can't remember the address, and off of Columbus Avenue, and my grandfather, and his brother-in-law, Tony Klausner, who was Aunt Addie's husband, and my grandmother's brother, decided that the 2 women should be together in what we called the big house, because it was a very big house on Langdon Terrace in Mount Vernon, and the 2 men were salesmen, Papa and Tony. And so they were away from the house a lot, and they didn't want the women to be alone. So the Klausner family and the Barzilay family were fairly close, needless to say, and they kids were all brought up together. After a while, they all moved from the big house.
Open your eyes.
What?
Open your eyes.
To Mount Vernon, at the apartment house where I live and was brought up at 531 East Lincoln Avenue.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about Papa. Can you tell me how many brothers and sisters he had?
I can't remember the names of them. He was one of 9, and Aunt Rhea was, I think I just said before, was the youngest. I really don't remember all the names of Papa's brothers.
Do you know where he was? Was he the oldest?
He was the top.
He was the oldest, and Aunt Rhea was the youngest.
He was the oldest, and Aunt Rhea was the youngest.
Do you know about how many years were between them?
Well, I think between them probably only 2 years apiece from the 9 of them.
So that's...
And they were here in this country when they were born, but the family that came over here were from Holland, and they were from Amsterdam. So literally the family goes back to the times of Holland, before the 1800s.
So the Barzilay family lived in Holland all those years?
Yes, they did.
Do you know how they got to Holland? Or where they came from?
No, I really don't know where they came from. I think they were all just born in Holland. And I did not know the great-grandparents that were there. I never met them because they were gone. When I went visiting there many years later, they walked me through the streets where the family used to live, but I don't really remember what the address was.
Okay. Do you know what country they came from to Holland? I mean,
no, synagogue? They were Holland. The Barzilays.
From way back. I mean, they belonged to what synagogue?
There was the synagogue in Holland, in Amsterdam. I have a picture someplace of the names of the Barzilay family on a
plaque,
a thing with the Barzilay family being there.
But what synagogue did they belong to?
No, they were Sephardic.
They belonged to a synagogue in New York. Which one?
Oh, I thought you were talking about in Holland.
I know, that's fine. Now, New
Oh,
York.
okay. Now it's in New York, so they were to the Oh, Amy, I don't remember
Mommy,
these
it's okay.
things
Just
now.
what do you don't have to know the name of it. There was something special about that
The
synagogue.
Sephardic synagogue in Manhattan,
But what country was it known for, that particular synagogue?
Holland. Oh,
No.
no.
No, there was the
Oh, Spanish. They were Spanish Jews.
yeah, but where not Spain, it was something else.
Portugal.
It was Portuguese. It was the Portuguese synagogue.
Oh, that one in yes, that was the one that was there. It was
Okay,
a
and New York was the
Spanish.
Portuguese synagogue.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
so there were Sephardic Jews
yes.
and who lived in Holland and came over, and then they apparently were Sephardi in Holland also, but they joined the Portuguese synagogue in New
In
York.
New York.
Okay, and is that where Nana and Papa got married?
I do believe so.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I do believe so, but I really am not sure because they could have gotten married through the Klosner side of the family
That's true.
someplace else.
Okay. And when did they buy or move into the
Big house?
big house? Just
I really don't remember all of this information,
that's fine.
unfortunately. I know that they probably may have moved in, or maybe shortly before the time that the two husbands, Jules and Papa, were doing their sales because they were salesmen and they wanted the two women to have each other around so that they were safe. And at this point, my mother, Leah Barsley, and Stanley Barsley, who were brother and sister, were living at this house, as was Jules and Ruth Klosner living at this house. The Klosners and the Barsleys had been, the kids had all grown up together and had been a good solid sort of family. Two families were a good solid family together.
did Papa tell you any stories about his childhood or
Um,
anything? Can you think of
I don't
anything?
really remember anything about Papa's childhood too much. All I do know is that he used to talk, and I don't think he even talked to Billy and Jackie like he would talk to me. I was the youngest in the family, so I was around with him. Papa and Nani came to live with my mother and father when Nani had a stroke, and Mom thought it was best that they come to live at 531 East Lincoln Avenue with her in the apartment. It was a nice big apartment house for them, and so I was probably much more around my grandparents than my sister Jackie and my brother Billy, living around with them and in their attention a lot.
You said Papa used to sit with you on a
My mother had a garden outside her apartment
keep your
house.
eyes open if you can.
What?
Try and keep your eyes open.
Try and keep my.
You should keep closing them to think. No, just
Okay.
normal, just regular, Mom. Okay, go ahead.
It's hard to do because it's a. You don't have to do that. That's okay. The mom and dad had an apartment in the Esplanade Apartments. They were the first ones to move into the apartment house at 531 East Lincoln Avenue. And Mom had a kindergarten there in the apartment house. She had 20 some odd kids in the kindergarten. Daddy worked at Paramount Pictures in Manhattan. And when my grandfather and grandmother were getting older, they decided they were going to have them come and live in the apartment house right with them. It was a big apartment, and they had their own room in the apartment, and they sold what we called the big house. The big house was where two families lived together for many, many years.
Right, you told us. What about the swing?
The who?
The swing that you and Papa
Oh,
used to sit
Papa,
on.
my mother had a chair swing that swing back and forth. The two chairs, one on each side, and Papa used to like to sit on the swing. And I was a youngster at the time, maybe 9, maybe 10, I don't even know, maybe younger than that. And I used to sit on the swing with him, and he used to. It's hard to do that. I don't know why. And he used to, we just got along very well together. He would tell me, I guess he was the one that probably used to tell me a lot of the Bible stories from the Old Testament, and why I don't know particularly, but I learned a lot about getting interested in reading the stories of the Old Testament later. And he used to like to read a lot. To be honest, I really don't have the memories enough of knowing all the things about them because I was too young in the family.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie would have remembered. My sister would have remembered a lot more. And I don't know that my brother would have even remembered a lot more because he doesn't seem to talk too much about our life there. So he doesn't seem to either remember it or doesn't think about it so much. But Papa, I enjoyed being with very much. He used to be very proud of the fact that he was from the family of Barzillai, and that was the most exciting part of my recognizing a biblical connection to the Old Testament. So I just got interested in reading about it in Genesis 9 and whatever, and it's been sort of a little bit of a pride that I have in the Old Testament because.
Can you tell us who Barzillai was?
Barzillai, yes, Barzillai was considered by many a very fine, good person, personality-wise and everything else, and he had been the one person who favored being with King David after Absalom, King David's son, was killed in the biblical war of, I forget which one, but it was. But when Absalom died, Barzillai sort of took King David, but he wasn't. Well, he was king at the time. Actually, no, he was king at the time. Into his realm, home or whatever, and biblically he befriended him and took care of him as a very, very good friend, close person. And you have to check Genesis 9 and etc. to read up about him. And he was supposed to have been a righteous man. If you do read up about him, they will say he was a righteous man. He's in the books of whatever, knowing the characters of the Bible.
And that's good to know. And can you tell us what Papa's nature was like?
What Papa's nature was like?
Yeah.
Probably King David's Barzillai.
Oh, you think
very, 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 not a dynamic person. Very, very calm as far as I ever knew. He as being part of the two families, Klausner's and Barzillai's, the two men had gone into some kind of a sales business together. And so they were outgoing type of people.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what they sold?
What did they sell? No, I forget. I'd have to look that up. I don't think it's something like, I don't know. I'm not going to say because I really forget what it is.
Okay, that's all right. It's not that important.
Cigars comes into play, but I'm not exactly sure if they were selling the cigars or just buying cigars because the two of them really like cigars.
Did Papa used to like to smoke a cigar?
Yes, the men in the family smoke cigars. Daddy smoked cigars. Yeah, it was a big thing.
It was a big thing, huh?
Garsha Vegas, as far as I remember, they were Garsha Vegas. My father smoked the Garsha Vegas. Okay. But none of them smoked cigarettes. My mother eventually started to smoke cigarettes, and they had to be pell-mells because they were very long cigarettes, much longer than any of the other cigarettes, and that way she felt she was not damaging herself by smoking them because they took a longer time to get to her lungs. I don't know.
Funny. That's very funny.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to Papa and Nani. Do you remember being at the big house at all?
Oh, yes, I remember being at the big house very much. And there is a very interesting description of the big house in a book that my cousin Mark wrote, and I believe it was called The Mile Along House, or the Walk a Mile House, I believe it was called. Now, I'm not so sure if that was the name of the book or whether they called it that in the book. But you can find out if you just get onto the internet.
Okay.
Mark Harris is the one who wrote the book, and he described the house very, very clearly. He described all the people in the house quite clearly. My mother, Aunt Ruth, and Tony, and everybody else. And if you really want to find out about what the Klausner's family and Barsley families was about,
tell us one of your memories. What are some of your memories from the big house?
Oh, the staircase. When you walk in the front door, by the way, before there's a little vestibule, and there are two big places for rubbers and boots and stuff like that, and a lot of them, they were filled with newspapers also. You walk in the big, this I can do it today.
Please.
There were two doors. There was a front door and a little vestibule where the boots stayed, and then there was a door to go in. As you walk in the door, there's the staircase right smack in front of you, which goes to the big bedrooms upstairs. There were two living rooms, but of course that's not true, because one was a dining room and one really was a living room. But on either side were parlors. One was where Uncle Benny used to sit, and the other parlor was where we sort of used to run around a little bit. Uncle Benny was my grandmother's brother.
Okay. Nani's brother.
Nani's brother,
okay.
Yeah. And Uncle Benny was blind, as I recall, and he used to play cards with you. Not that he knew what the cards were, but he could feel what the cards were and play cards like that. And that would have been at the big house, because they bought the big house for the two women, and the two men shared it.
Right.
And when the men were away, as I said, the women were there safely with their kids. So Mom grew up with Aunt Ruth as a cousin, and Papa, and Uncle Stanley was my mother's brother, and Uncle Jules was Aunt Ruth's brother. So the four of them were really brought up practically as brothers and sisters.
Were they the same age as?
They were all the same age.
Okay, so tell me more about the big house. So you said there's a grand staircase going up?
Oh, well, grand staircase. I mean, if I walked in, years later, it wasn't so grand. But when I was a kid, it was a big staircase. And when I was a kid, the house was huge. And there was a piano in one of the living rooms. And it was used a lot. And the other living room, there was also a sitting room off of that where we used to where you could sit. It was in my day it was huge, but when I went into it many years later, it was not huge at all. It was smaller, but the way I describe it is the way it still is.
Was it a large property?
It was a property on three corners, yes. It was Langdon Terrace is where the front of the house was, and then there were two other streets, and I don't remember their names, and the two other streets went on either side of the house. So the house was literally on a three-corner area, and it had two porches on either side. It was used a great deal during the First World War because Jules had lived in it, Stanley had lived in it, and they brought, when Mom and Dad got married, they did not live there. Well, they may have for a while, because I think Jackie might have been born there, but I'm not so sure about that either. They really had a lot to do all together during the First World War. And I think that's how they all sort of met and got comfortable, and they used to have a lot of the buddies in the 349th. I forget what it is. There's a number on the picture. If you want to show them, you can show them the picture of the First World War. That is the award that my father got for being wounded. In the First World War, he was blinded, And in fact, there was a movie came out many years later called The Horse.
War Horse.
War Horse, and that is exactly the situation that my father fell into.
Okay.
So it might be interesting if you could get hold of the movie The War Horse. You'll see exactly what it was like for them in the army.
Well, we'll get back to Grandpa my grandpa
Oh, I'm
another
sorry.
time. We're on
Okay.
Papa right now, and the big house.
Okay.
What do you have like memories? Sometimes, if we think back on memories, a smell or a sound.
Yeah.
Can
Well,
you give us a memory from?
I can give it quite a few memories because Uncle Benny used to like to play cards, and he would give us card games and tease us with his card tricks and all that sort of stuff. The other thing, and that was my grandmother's brother, Uncle Ben, Benjamin Klausner. My grandmother, Naomi Klausner, that is was called Aunt Nani at the time. She was the matron, and Aunt Addie was the matron number 2 of this big house that I was talking about. And in the dining room, I guess the biggest thing I remember was the button. There was a button under the dining room table that they would push with their foot because they had help. And the maid, I don't remember what her name was, but she was on something on the genealogy that I was looking in the censuses. She was their housekeeper or maid or something or other, and I don't remember her name. But if Nani was having dinner in this beautiful dining room and the family was sitting around and she wanted something, she could just push her foot on the button and somebody would come out from the kitchen and take care of whatever they need. That's not to say that they were so well-to-do and so rich, but in those days, the two families had bought the house together, and
together they could afford a maid.
Yeah, so make it reasonable for them.
Who did the cooking?
I think Aunt Addie did most of the cooking. Because I don't really remember my grandmother cooking so much at all. I think probably Aunt Addie did most of the cooking. Because I don't really remember my grandmother doing a lot of cooking when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, my grandmother had also had a nervous breakdown. So when I knew her really quite well was when she had the nervous breakdown.
Okay.
I didn't really know her, well, like my sister knew her.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And my brother, I think, remembers very little of anything for some reason, because when I talked to him about it.
Do you remember like playing at the big house and what kind of games you used to play and who you used to play with?
No.
Okay.
And I think that's because I was too young.
Okay.
I was really young at the big house.
I get it.
Jackie was 10 years older than I was.
Right.
So she would have remembered the big house. But Billy for some reason or other, does not remember it at all.
Okay, so when Papa used to come, when Papa and Nani came to live with you,
yes. Yeah, so
can you tell us a little about the apartment?
In 531?
Yeah, just,
Nani and Papa came to visit. My grandfather had a stroke, fell down in Mount Vernon, and Mom felt that they had to...
Wait, hold on. Who fell down?
Papa.
Who had a stroke?
Papa.
Oh, it wasn't Nani. Before
No,
you had mentioned
no,
Nani. Yes. Okay.
no. Nani had a nervous breakdown.
Right, so Papa fell down,
Yes.
had a stroke.
Yes.
Okay. And then Grandma decided they should come and live with you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, you told us about the garden of the apartment. Can you tell us a little about the inside of the apartment?
Yes, it was one of the best apartments in the apartment house. It was the first apartment in the apartment house that was rented because it was my mother's. And Mother, when she saw it, recognized it would be very good. She had a nursery school. Mm-hmm. And she felt it would be very good because there was a garden outside, or she made the garden outside the bedroom, one of the bedrooms, and had stairs going out. They made the door from a window. And so and then she had the area cemented over and fenced in. And it was what she used for the nursery that she had. And it was quite a good nursery. It was Mrs. Adams's School for Little Children, I think it was called in the newspaper.
Little people or little children?
Huh?
Little people or little children? Little people or little children?
No. Did she say little people? I don't know. Could be something like that. I looked it up years ago, and school for little people, that could very well be. And so I don't know how many years she had it, but I know that by the time, and that was because my sister, who was 10 years older, was a sort of a lonely child, and she didn't seem to want to play so much with other kids, and so she wanted to have children around her. So
Okay, but
she had quite a nice clientele,
right.
and it was called the School for Little People.
Let's go back to Papa.
Oh,
Tell us, like, Papa and Nani moved in. How many bedrooms were there in the apartment? I mean, that's, a lot of people here.
well, after we closed down the big house,
Yeah.
because people were getting older, getting sick or whatever, they came to live with us, and there was 3 bedrooms. One was really initially a dining room when they first bought the apartment. It had an open swinging door into the kitchen, which was a good size, fairly big kitchen. It was the ground floor. It was probably the prime apartment that you could get at the time, although they all were the same going up the 7 floors. It was on the floor where all the mail used to come, and we had a big elevator in the apartment that we used to play
So
in.
where did Nani and Papa stay in the
And
apartment?
when the time came for Nani and Papa to come and stay, Mom turned the dining room into their bedroom.
Oh, okay.
And the foyer, which was a very big foyer, was turned into the dining room. So as you walk in the front door of the apartment house, ours, 1L apartment house, that was what you came into, was the dining room. And then to the right was the kitchen, which was a good size kitchen. It was long, had a window, and could hold a table and stove, and had, plenty of room in it. Today, I guess it would be considered smaller, but it was good size. And then from that, there was a dumbwaiter that they used to take the garbage from the downstairs, and the porters downstairs used to throw it into garbage and then send it up again. So being in the dumbwaiter occasionally, we would just get into the dumbwaiter and pull ourselves up and down in the dumbwaiter when they stopped using it that way. So we had a lot of crazy good times in that apartment.
We'll get back to that. I want to go back to, I'm trying to bring it back to Nani and Papa all the time.
Okay.
So Papa and Nani lived in that bedroom. Did Papa, he had a stroke, but yet you were able to sit outside with him, and he was able to talk with you and tell you things. Can you, how did that work?
It worked fine, because whatever the stroke did, it didn't take anything away from him so much. And sometimes I wonder, I'm talking about a stroke now. I know he did have a stroke and fell down, and that's why he came to live with my mother. But he was not incapacitated, really. He really wasn't. And he just, I don't know, I just knew of him as somebody who was very comfortable to be around.
Did he ever tell you any stories about his childhood and his brothers and sisters?
From his childhood?
Yeah. Did he ever, share anything with you?
Let me think. No, I know he was one of 9. That's all I knew. He and Aunt Ree used to come up to visit, but all the other 7 brothers and sisters I never really knew that much, because they live far away. Like it's Cleveland and other areas of the United States. So Aunt Rhea is the one who used to come most of the time. She was a baby at my grandmother and grandfather's wedding. And as she grew older, she used to visit with us all the time. She was a single woman, never got married, but was very interested in travel and stuff like that. And she was employed by somebody in Manhattan. I forget what it was. It wasn't Paramount Pictures. She was employed as oh dear, I forget what it was. I'm not going to waste time, but it was a movie company. I forget which one it was. So she would meet a lot of actors and actresses and stuff like that, and had a very good independent unmarried life.
So Papa was a good soul.
In my opinion, Papa was the best guy you could ever want to meet.
Uh-huh.
Mom, in her patio outside, had one of these
Yes.
chair swings that go back,
Yeah,
and
you
one
told
could
us.
sit on one side of the swing and the other on the other
Did you
side.
know? Did Mama ever? Did Grandma, my grandmother, ever tell you about being brought up in Nani and Papa's
In the big house.
Yeah. Did
In
she
the
ever
big
tell you
oh
very much about it?
oh yeah, that's all he ever talked about was the big house. Jules and Ray, when she married Uncle Jules, they moved in. Well, I must say that all of them eventually moved into the apartment house that my mother lived in at 531. So Aunt Addie, which was Aunt Ruth's mother, and my cousin Martha's grandmother, lived in a single apartment downstairs on one floor. Aunt Ruth lived in the fourth floor of the same building. And so Martha grew up in that building, Martha and Mark and Henry. And my mother had bought the apartment in 531 as the very first person to move in. So that's when the others started to move in after her. Then Uncle Jules moved in, which was Martha's Aunt Ray's brother, moved in into another apartment downstairs in another building, building 1 or 2 or 3, I forget which one. And they had a ground floor apartment, like a nice big one like my mother's. And then when they were all moved in, my father's sister, Aunt Margaret, also moved into one of the apartment houses, one of the apartments. And so she was on the 4th floor of building 1. Aunt Ray was and Uncle Jules were in building 1, or 2 rather, and Martha and Aunt Ruth and Aunt Addie and etc. were in the building to the right, that was building 1. The others are building 2. We were in building 3, and nobody related to us was in. Yes, the one related to us later on, not really related, was Frank and Tony, who were a couple that were children of Aunt Paula and her husband, Red. I don't know where they came from. They were friends of my mother's. And it was the kind of apartment house where you just knew everybody. I mean...
Okay, we'll talk about that too. I want to get back to, as much as we can, to sort of milk this whole situation of Papa and the Barzoles.
Well, Papa and the Barzoles were, I was always impressed with the fact that they were a biblical family.
Right, you told us. Yeah, you told us.
I told you that.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
I'm just trying to think of other things that we can maybe pinpoint a little bit. Was he tall? Was he short? I mean,
Papa was tall and lean.
Okay.
And wore his hat very much tilted on the side, or forward or something or other. I look upon him as a very refined, fine person compared to Uncle Jules, who, but of course, he was older than Jules. He was the generation up above, but Jules was a Klausner and Papa was a Barzilay. So when you talk about the two different families that were very close to me at the time, they were entirely different.
So the Barzilay family was a more refined family?
Seemingly. But
Seemingly.
Yeah, they were Sephardic Jews.
Right.
I don't know if that has anything to do with anything, but the Klausners were not Sephardic. They were Ashkenazic Jews from Europe. And if you have to look at any personalities or anything, you might say you could sort of break the personalities down, because I was told that the Sephardim were very educated, I don't know if it's true or not at all, but that's what I was told, that the education was very much a part of their realm, and I don't know how to say it. All I know is I got the feeling that one was definitely a European Jew, and the other Barzilays were Spanish Jews.
Right.
So that's where it breaks. It's different personalities or whatever.
Okay. Well, did Nani and Papa get along?
Oh yes.
They had a good relationship.
Yeah. I don't ever remember them fighting each other or anything. I don't remember anything negative in the family. My sister might have remembered it. I don't even know if Billy would even remember anything about it. But being the baby of the family, I was a spoiled brat, so I just don't think that there was anything ever wrong in that
And
family.
that was it.
It was a wonderful family.
So Papa was born in the 1800s, and he was born in the United States, and we think he was born in New York. And then he moved out
He and
to
Nani
Mount
were
Vernon.
both born in New York.
And then they moved out to Mount Vernon, either just after they got married or
Yeah,
short
they
after
they didn't come from Europe at all. They were
Yeah,
American
they were just
citizens
American
from the
citizens
very
from the
beginning.
start. Very good. All right, good. I think that's enough for today.
Okay.
Unless do you? Well, no, I shouldn't say that. Do you have anything else you'd like to tell us about Papa?
I just loved him.
Yeah.
I just loved him.
Okay.
I didn't know my Adams my father's side of the family really much at all. They did move from Scotland, and they moved into an apartment not too far away. They used to visit us. Aunt Margaret, of course, and that's why Aunt Margaret got the apartment there too, because they lived on Prospect Avenue, but Aunt Margaret had been divorced, and I think my father was helpful in getting Aunt Margaret and Louise an apartment in the building.
But okay, but the Barsleys were.
The Barsleys were the Jewish side. The Barsleys were the Jewish Sephardic side. The Klausners were Jewish.
Did they celebrate any holidays that
No,
you remember?
I don't ever remember anybody celebrating any Jewish holidays at all.
So.
I know Nana used to sit in the chair. She was very quiet, and she did have a breakdown, so she really didn't carry on later in life too much conversations. But when it was a Jewish holiday, she would always tell us what it was. You know, it's Passover coming now. You know that it's going to be this kind of holiday. It's going to be that kind of holiday.
But Papa never showed any interest.
No,
Okay.
I don't ever remember him talking about a holiday.
Okay.
I don't even know whether or not the Papa's family did belong to the Sephardic Jewish synagogue in Manhattan.
The Portuguese, yeah.
Portuguese synagogue in Manhattan. Nani, I don't ever really remember the Klausners talking about belonging to a synagogue.
Interesting.
Come to think of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So they were all here during the time that the Jews were really attempting to assimilate, I think.
True. Yeah. All right. Good, Mommy. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome, my dear.
We're going to do it again with the Klausners. We'll do it again with the Adamses, but
okay,
we'll get it all down. Okay?
That's fine.
Well, thank you.
If I think of anything, I'll try to remember.
We can always add on to this. No
Okay.
problem. All right?
Well, thank you.
Yeah, all right, Mama. Take care. Thanks.
You're welcome. Bye.